Time. I am still officially the clerk, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I see that we have a full house. So we don't need to take a vote on that. The first item on our agenda is to elect select board officers. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move to nominate Mary Hartman as chair of the select board.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Next thing we need to do is to appoint or elect a clerk. Do I have a motion?
I move to nominate Mark Howell as clerk of the select board.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good, very good. And also, I should also take this opportunity. Well, first of all, I want to thank my colleagues for my vote for their vote of confidence in me, and I'll do my best.
We wish you the best.
Congratulations.
I should also take this opportunity to welcome our two new members, Wendy Ravelli and Cameron McKenna. Won their election. The people have spoken. We want to welcome you with your experience and your commitment. I think we'll have a more balanced select board, and hopefully we'll enter into some robust discussion. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to open it up to public comment. Public comment is restricted to items that aren't on the agenda. If an item's on the agenda, we will open it up to public comment when we get to that agenda item. If we're going to take a vote. So we'll do it when we get to the agenda items, but this portion is for items that aren't on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And we're going to have to ask you to come up to the table if you want to have a public comment, because we have to use this thing, we call it the owl, to broadcast what you're saying. So is there, it looks like an owl. At least from here it does. So would anybody like to make a public comment?
Yeah, should I go? Can I?
Sure.
Sure. Great. Thanks. Well, something great.
Okay.
I think it's 2 minutes and 44 seconds.
Please start with your name and your address.
Yes. Yeah, I am Chesley Chen, 196 Williams Road. And as an introduction to me, I have a history of community service in Concord. I was Boy Scout leader and Scoutmaster for 11 years, believe it or not. During my tenure, 47 Scouts earned the rank of Eagle.
Yeah.
47. That's actually 1/3 of all the Eagle Scouts in the 48-year history of Boy Scouts. Troop here. Astounding to look at. There we instill our Scouts' values such as inclusion, fairness, honesty, and common courtesy. We hope they carry these values into their adult lives. I'd like to read the statement in favor of the Ellen Garrison Middle School that I prepared for last week's school committee meeting. Typing the first one at the meeting, I was not selected to speak and I was excluded. Here's what I would have said. I came here to ask you to name the middle school, new middle school, Ellen Garrison Middle School. I'm a person of color. I'm Chinese American. My wife, Mary, and I raised our 4 kids here. They all went through the Concord school system successfully. Mary and I are 2-time Concord residents, first from 87 to 91, and then again from 99 to now. We absolutely love it here in Concord. We always felt that the town and its reputation represents a culture of inclusion, welcomes, and embraces diversity. Chinese people have a long history of being excluded in America. In fact, yesterday, a week ago, was the 142nd anniversary of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. We've all come a long way since then. I'm proud that the vote was overwhelmingly yes at the town meeting in favor of support of Ellen Garrison Middle School. Thank you, people. Rather than go over things already discussed, I want to talk about reputation. If we go with Ellen Garrison Middle School, Concord protects and keeps our reputation and culture of inclusion, a culture that welcomes and embraces diversity, a town that we all can be proud of. My fear is that if the school committee doesn't choose Ellen Garrison Middle School, it will tarnish the town's reputation and by association, the townspeople. Concord could earn a reputation of turning back our backs on history of inclusion. I really don't want to see that happen. The school committee itself has a rare opportunity to pivot and protect Concord's reputation and maybe even improve it if we do the message properly. There's a way to pivot and message it properly. That's all in the school committee's control. My question is, which reputation do you, the school committee, want Concord to be known for? You know, what reputation do the school committee want us all to be known for? For me, the choice is very clear. That's bad. Is that? Thank you.
Michael Williams, 1284 Sudbury Road. I first want to congratulate the new members to the select board, Wendy Ravelli, and Lieutenant. Next, I would like to thank the select board for their strong support of Ellen Garrison, first in the proclamation for Ellen Garrison Day on the 14th of April, and secondly, for the strong support that you've given in favor of Article 22 in support of Ellen Garrison Middle School as the name for the school. Finally, I would ask you to use whatever powers that the select board has available, since I know it is not within your purview, but use whatever powers the select board has available to it to urge our school committee to simply answer the ask of the town, which was overwhelming, and asking that the school be named the Ellen Garrison Middle School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Good evening. Pat Brewer, 132 Wright Road. 2 years ago, I stood before the select board with other Concord residents to ask for your support in creating the
How are you? Good, you're ready.
Board listened, and I want to thank you.
Sorry,
for that.
I lost my, can you,
Yeah.
we'll give you that.
Yeah.
Do you mind starting again? I kind of lost. You
Yeah, we're
started
not
with-
really here.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
sorry.
No, it's not you. I just want to
Okay.
make sure you get the full.
Okay, so 2 years ago, I stood before the select board, some of you were there, with other Concord residents to ask for your support in creating a DEI commission. The board listened, and I want to thank you for that. You further showed your support for this work by supporting Article 22, allowing town meeting to have a voice on the naming of our new publicly funded middle school. And again, I want to thank you. I appreciate the work the select board and the DEI commission are doing to make Concord a more welcoming community for all. When the topic of naming the new middle school came up last fall, I emailed all members of the select board asking what the process would involve. On November 9th, I received an email response from Henry Dane, chair of the select board at the time. He stated, without getting too deeply into the technicalities, the naming of town property is governed by APP 43, which says, in part, that requests for naming any public property such as buildings shall be considered at an advertised public hearing before the board or committee responsible for operating the facility. I know you guys know this. The board or committee shall then refer a suggestion or suggestions to the select board with a record of the hearing and a committee recommendation for approval. It is my understanding that Concord Public School Committee met on this matter the other night and intends to follow the process outlined in APP 43. Well, we know that was not the case. I'm aware that the school committee voted for a new policy on December 19th that overrode APP 43 and gave them the final say in naming rights. Town meeting was overwhelmingly in favor of Ellen Garrison, and last Tuesday, approximately 60 people attended the school committee meetings to ask if it would consider the vote of town meeting. It's been 14 days since the vote of town meeting, and the school committee has not responded to the public with an answer to that question. My question for you, will the select board have a new committee liaison? I know it was Henry Dane. Will you have a new liaison? And will that person ask or encourage the school committee to answer the town? The hundreds of people who came out and voted and who are paying the high price tag for this building deserve an answer. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Craig Allmiller. I'm new to Concord and I live at 27 Lamp Street, just around the corner. I would want to express my thanks to the select board and to our community at large for their overwhelming support of warrant article 22, asking for our new middle school to be named after Ellen Garrison. The town of Concord does not make news when it names a school for Concordians who struggle to advance the causes of democracy and freedom. Many in our town, from those who died at the North Bridge to those who died on the battlefields of the Civil War, have similarly struggled. We do not make news when we uphold that tradition. We make news when we do not. This is reflected in the unflattering local news coverage that has already appeared. At its May 7th, 2024 meeting, the school committee clearly communicated that it does not intend to heed the message so clearly expressed at town meeting. By ignoring that message, the school committee has, in its intransigence, created yet another opportunity for public embarrassment. We had already made news by refusing to name a school after a local heroine, and now we are on the cusp of making even more news by, under the guise of legalisms, refusing to adhere to the basic tenets of democracy. The New York Times recently ran a front page article on a school district in Virginia that reinstated the name of Thomas Stonewall Jackson to one of their public schools. While I am certain that Concord will never name its school after Confederate general, I can well see how we could be portrayed in the national media by well-respected news outlets as genteel, superficially democratic, both sides of our mouths examples of knee-jerk anti-wokeism. Why are we getting caught up in this sort of thing? Why incur such an unnecessary risk? With our 250th anniversary approaching, what can possibly be gained by making our community a further flashpoint for controversy? It's time for cooler and clearer heads to prevail. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Dorfman, 27 Line Street. And first of all, I want to thank all of you and congratulate the new members, my neighbor, Wendy. And to also thank you for your support to name the middle school, Garrison Middle School. Unlike many of the people here, I'm new. I'm from Amherst, and I'm excited to be in Concord. However, I have to say I am quite dismayed at how the situation with the naming of the middle school is being handled by the school committee. Obviously, as you heard, and you were all there, there was an overwhelming, for those people who did attend town meeting 2 weeks ago, an overwhelming number of people voted in favor of naming the school Ellen Garrison Middle School, which I very strongly support. Subsequent to that, when we went to the meeting last week with the school committee, what was very dismaying was the way in which the school committee handled that. First, the school committee, as we have heard, never answered the question, never addressed the issue at hand that was raised at town meeting. Secondly, instead, one of the school committee members decided to propose naming the Ripley building the Ellen Garrison school instead of the middle school, not addressing the question at hand. In doing that, she said that she mused or maybe not mused, but considered quote unquote circumventing the process. Those are her words, not mine. And that is very concerning. We have a process here and that needs to be followed. And if they are going to insist everything is followed, they need to follow the process. That's very, very troubling. It is also very troubling to me that She also considered, now whether she will actually do this or not, but considered transferring the feedback, the input to name Ellen Garrison Middle School, Ellen Garrison, to this new idea. And that is frankly misappropriating that input. Nobody gave her permission to do that. She hasn't done that, but I sure hope she won't do that because that's inappropriate. And finally, I have to say, and I am a civil rights, disability rights lawyer, and I was very offended by the idea that the Ripley School would be named after Ellen Garrison. That suggestion, given the fact that there is a segregated special education program that's housed in that school. So I would ask you, whatever power that you have, to try to reverse this so that we can name the middle school Ellen Garrison Middle School. I would be grateful for whatever you all can do. Thank you very much for your time.
You'll hear this a lot tonight, but congratulations to the new family. And to you too, Mary, for choosing, take the role you have chosen. So, my name is Chewy Rogers, 30 Elsinore Street. I first want to say just how much I do love this town and raised my child here. It's a great place to be. Its history, its people, both past and present, and its role in leading the United States in the fight for freedom. And you know all of this in intellectual thought and also for social justice over the years. But I'm here tonight because of the way I feel about this town. We can never take leadership for granted. As we've been seeing in America today, what can happen when we look the other way and become complacent. Next year, we'll have the quarter millennial celebration, the beginning of the American Revolution. I'm on one of the 250th committees, and it's led by citizens. The revolution was led by citizens from towns all around us, but the first skirmish was at the Old North Bridge, right here in Concord. And next year's celebration celebrates, and I quote, focuses on all Americans' stories. E pluribus unum, out of many one, and our history is part of who we were, who we are, and who we will be, end quote. So next year's focus is, for the first time in 250 years of independence, on those whose voices have not been heard. Next year, you'll also have the incredible opportunity, you can guess where I'm going, to name a middle school. And we could name it after this incredible newly discovered person who, well, relatively newly discovered, who came out of the hidden mists of unimportant over the years for 129 years. But now we know who she is, and we're learning more about this remarkable woman every month. Next year, the eyes of America, I've said this before, will be focused on Concord. Americans will be looking at how we lead. What we do matters beyond our comfortable borders, and this is a matter of pride to all of us. We will be judged by what we do in the coming year, and we will be judged by what we don't do. I hope that each and every one of you on this senior governing, leading governing board of Concords can do all within your power to keep Concord's leadership role intact. We understand our history, we recognize our present, and we embrace our future. Let's continue to make this so. Let's continue to still be heard around the world. Thank you.
I have a statement that I'd like to read in response. The select board notes that the town meeting 2024 voted affirmative action on Article 22 by an overwhelming majority. Although the vote was not counted, it is generally agreed that most of the 973 voters who had checked into town meeting for that evening were still present at the time of the vote. This vote of town meeting asks the school committee to reconsider their decision on naming the new middle school. The naming decision is completely within the purview of the school committee. While we appreciate that citizens are sharing their views on this topic with us, and we're delighted to give you a forum to do that, the select board has consulted town council and confirmed that it has no formal or informal role in the naming decision. Accordingly, the select board will not be acting on this matter. I encourage you to write letters and to reach out to the school committee to let them know your feelings on this. And thank you for coming here tonight and giving us the opportunity to hear you.
Can I say something? I'm sorry, I just got here, but I really, there's something
You
I
have to
think
sit
is
at,
missing.
I'm sorry, you have to sit.
Yeah.
Oh,
get up there.
We can't hear, we can't hear.
I have trouble walking, but I will get up here somehow. I'm Connie Line, I'm 149 Stowe Street. I've lived here 48 years. I'm a graduate of Concord, Carlisle. My daughter went to the Concord school. She's a teacher now in Marblehead. And I went to the town meeting on the 30th, I believe it was, to vote for the Ellen Garrison School. And during that back and forth with the school, someone asked the question about the petition with 1,100 names on it that was presented to them. And the woman in charge said they received it, but they did not do anything with it. And so I had been looking before the meeting on May 7th, the school committee meeting. I had been looking in their minutes to try to see what actually happened at that vote and the day that that was presented. And the minutes were not posted. So for 3 months, they didn't post the February 6th minutes. And then I did find them today when I looked. There was also 2 other sets of meeting minutes missing. And the vote that they took, when you read this, they acknowledge that the person got up and that they received the petition. But their vote, if you read their vote, there is not anywhere in the minutes that it says there was a vote called for Ellen Garrison. It says that Fort Booth requested a vote or something, but it wasn't, and then he wanted people to just, there was no mention that the vote was for Ellen Garrison. And then they had another vote that said it was for Concord Middle School. And so I think their vote is invalid, first of all, because they did not do anything with the 1,100 names to see if they were Concord residents. But I'm sure that if you put those names in there, it far exceeded Concord Middle School. And then it said some other crazy things, like someone got up and said they surveyed Concord Carlisle High School kids for the school name. And like, that's, someone should, at the meeting should have said, that's not relevant. They said he spoke to 40 students and there's like over 1,200 students. So they didn't correct that person to say that's probably not a statistically significant vote. And why are you asking the high school when this is the name of the middle school? So there's a lot of problems with that vote and with those minutes. And regardless of whether, you know, you're allowed to have some input, you should look into that because it's an invalid vote.
Thank you for your comment. I encourage you to bring that up to the school committee.
Well, yeah, as soon as I've made a public records request for the names, and I'm going to sit down with the town clerk and see how many are Concord's residents. And then I will vote for I've already made the school committee aware of this. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, but you should know that. Then that they're not putting their minutes in when they should.
We're out of time, so for public comment. Unless there's a new topic that someone wants to comment on, a new topic.
Well, it's a new topic as far as the head of Metco and lost it in the letter they sent.
Yeah.
And I'd like to read it.
We, like the school committee, as a public body, we have a requirement to post and we have a policy, which is 15 minutes, and we do appreciate it. And of course, these comments are all valid, but we do also have quite a bit of business to get on to tonight. So it's time for us to move on to the consent agenda.
Thank you. So I move that we approve the consent agenda as published in the package.
Can I,
Any discussion?
yeah, can I just ask, on the committee nominations, are those all people who are replacing? Do we know, are those people who are replacing people who are rolled off? Are they?
No.
They're not.
No.
In many cases, there are people whose terms are ended but haven't served 2 terms. So the town policy for committees service is generally 2 consecutive terms and then you move on to something else.
And also some committees have it in their charge that they can expand their membership at a certain milestone.
Okay.
So some of these were in fact the result of committees electing to expand their membership.
And so if we're nominating them today, then is there a discussion on this?
We can discuss it if you want to. We will move to, what happens is these now go into the appointments for our
Wow,
next,
nice and tender this way, huh?
which will be May 20th.
Yes, I wouldn't mind if we just went through them, the 3 of them.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
pull that off, okay?
Yeah, and we can also remove a nomination and bring it back later.
Right, there's only 3
There are.
nominations, so.
Yeah.
You want to remove all of them versus?
I think we should, yeah, I mean, if we're gonna discuss them, let's discuss all 3,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
do we,
Okay, so motion to approve the consent calendar except for the nominations.
do you have a second? All in favor?
I,
Okay, so let's go ahead.
Yeah, so,
Here, you wanted to,
Nominations are eligible.
I know,
One,
so
two,
who's gonna, what do you want?
yeah, we'll just, so the first, I mean, let's just take them in order. So Joe
Yeah.
Colombo, is that a replacement?
No, that's an expansion
So
of an
that-
existing committee.
An expansion, okay.
Yeah,
So, and is that the committee saying they
yes,
wanna
yes.
expand?
yes, I was at that meeting and they voted, to recommend Joe.
Okay. And is it, because typically people are usually only on one committee, right? Unless it's
Well-
really sort of by exception.
It is by exception, but let's just say it's a broadly used exception.
Charter laws.
Especially if it's a temporary committee, like a task force or the 250th, then we can make a lot of exceptions, like
Okay.
almost everybody on the 250th is an exception.
Is on
because-
another committee?
Yes.
Well, because it's a temporary.
We're more flexible with APP 10 if it's a task force or a temporary committee, but we do make exceptions to APP 10 because we're gonna have a lot of people who want to volunteer. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, so, okay, so just to
Go ahead.
confirm that,
No, that's
that
fine.
committee
Yep.
nominated him.
You're right.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Okay, and then Pat, Nelson for the planning board, is that a,
That's someone is rolling off of that committee,
Okay,
so
so
she's
that's
a
a replacement.
replacement, and it was voted by the board.
got it, okay. And then Linda,
Linda Escobedo is actually, they're expanding their membership of this committee, and that was voted by the committee.
okay, all right, so they've all been recommended by the board or by the,
They
In
always
this case,
are.
just to be clear though, it's the select board that actually nominates and appoints members. But
Yeah.
they usually want to make sure that the committee is.
yeah, that's what I'm sort of checking, like, hey,
Exactly.
they
But
went
not
through that,
always.
not always, but
Not
in this
always.
case,
And
that's,
usually.
yeah, that's why I wanted to sort of.
Yeah. But it is at the select board's discretion.
And one of the roles of the liaison, and we'll be talking about liaison assignments later, someone that had asked us about that, is to develop a relationship with the board, usually with the chair, and understand what the needs are and what their membership changes are going to be. So we're going to be processing a lot of, well, we've got a bunch of appointments coming up, but we'll have a lot more over the next couple of meetings because almost every committee and board, their terms expire either at the end of May or right after town meeting or something. So we've got a whole slew of these still.
So Cameron, are you ready now to move on with this committee nominations? Okay, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we would approve those.
Okay. Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, unanimous, thank you.
Great. Okay.
Next is select board appointments.
Okay. Move to correctly appoint Allison Ailey of 47 Warner Street to the West Concord Advisory Committee as an associate member for a term to expire May 31, 2027. Do I have a second?
You want to keep going?
Oh, you want to do it?
Just go.
Okay. Move to appoint the following candidates to the Agriculture Committees for terms to expire May 31st, 2027. Grace Simone of 10 Dana as a current associate member as a full member. Brian Kramer of 792 Monument Street as a full member. Mark Condon of 11 Heath Road, Shrewsbury as associate member, and to be exempt from Concord's residency requirement as outlined in APC.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Town managers report. Maybe you're gonna give us a top rate.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm Samuda, Deputy Town Manager. As was discussed today, Concord's 2024 annual town meeting was held at the Concord Carlisle High School on Monday, April 29th, with 1,131 voters in attendance. Tuesday, the 30th, with 977 voters in attendance, and Wednesday, the 1st, with 439 voters in attendance. I want to thank and appreciate all the staff, volunteers, and board and committee members for another successful town meeting. In sustainability, there was a celebration of Earth Week, and that was with the Sustainability Division, Mothers Out Front, the Concord Public Library, Muscatatuck Arts and Environment, the Climate Action Committee, all joined together to successfully host the Cooler Concord Environment Festival on the 20th. It did have to shift locations because of the weather, but it was at the Concord Carlisle High School cafeteria, and we had between 250 to 300 people. The Concord Free Public Library is thrilled to announce that the library is the first in the state of Massachusetts to be certified as a sustainable library through the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. So we're very thrilled about that designation. In the fire department, on April 29th, Safe Coordinator Firefighter Evan Posey presented home fire safety to kindergartners and first graders at students at Alcott. There was a 6-month hiatus. After a 6-month hiatus, Ladder 1 in the fire service returned to service on April 26th. Ladder 1 went through a scheduled midlife refurbishment. Drivetrain issues, suspension, braking, electrical, bodywork, and aerial ladder systems were all returned to like-new condition, and we expect to get many more years of service from this apparatus. In the police department, Lieutenant Timothy Landers assisted Acton Police Department with their annual Special Olympics held at Acton Boxborough Regional High School. And we also have Officer Derek Madalini was named the department's new field training officer, and he'll assist in training new officers for the department. I will close with a couple surveys. The Concord Municipal Light Plant is conducting an anonymous digital survey among our residential electric customers from now until June 7th. The purpose of this survey is to gather opinions from customers regarding their perception of and satisfaction with the utility, customer service experience, communication preferences, and interest in programs and services. And the town of Concord and its historical commission have hired Heritage Strategies LLC to help the community prepare a historic preservation plan for the 21st century with support from the Community Preservation Committee and the Mass Historical Commission. So there's been a survey issued as part of the larger community planning effort to help preserve and celebrate Concord. And you can find these town manager reports on our website. You can see them just about every week, and the links will be there for the surveys. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I've been the chair for half an hour, so I don't have much to say. So far, it's been fun. So we're going to move now to the liaison reports. Does anybody have any liaison reports that they'd like to share?
I have no liaison. I do.
Okay.
I actually have more than usual. Been very busy for some reason. The first thing is Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So for the past few months, the committee's been relatively inactive because we've entered now a maintenance phase. The trail's mostly built. So I've been working with the Transportation Committee, Public Works Commission, the members of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. There's only 3 members left right now. I met with Megan and Carrie. I talked to Alan Cathcart today, and the consensus seems to be pretty much what you suggested, Megan, with a little tweak, that we disband, the select board vote to disband this committee, and Public Works will take over the maintenance issues, like plowing in the winter, keeping weeds off, or whatever all the maintenance is, and TAC will work with the other towns to ensure uniform signage or policy about e-bikes, or, you know, once in a while policy things that come through. So I guess on a future agenda, there might be an item for us to vote to disband the Bruce Freeman.
Are the three people, can I interrupt? Are the
There are three people.
Are they okay with that?
They are actually in agreement, and they're interested in applying for other committees such as tax. So that's great,
Okay, good.
because we never want to turn away people who are willing to serve. And so that's really been good. So the next thing is,
Do you think there's a role for the Recreation Commission?
yes, definitely. And the trails, there's a lot of coordination, right.
Okay.
The next one is the 250th committee. I bought some coins and they're beautiful. I recommend everybody go to the visitor center and buy these fundraising commemorative coins for your children, grandchildren, presents, or whatever. They're working on a new charge, and we're requesting a one-page summary budget, which we really need, all of us as taxpayers, to see what's happening there. And I've also requested that they start having hybrid meetings. They've only had in-person meetings, and we need, this is the big year. I'm pushing for some more transparency with that. The next one is I've been working with Cynthia Rainey on the capital planning task force process. As you know, we adopted this process in 2021. We've been doing it for 3 years. It's been off to kind of a shaky start. It needs some tweaks. And Mary asked us to take a look. And in the next month or two, we think that we'll have a draft for the select board to approve and the school committee to approve. We don't anticipate making a lot of major changes, but just some tweaks to make it more practical, in line with what the town and school are already doing, and make it easier in terms of the dates and the tier levels. Next one's 2229 Main Street. There will be an important public forum on June 4th at 7 o'clock, where they're going to give a status report, what they've learned so far, and mostly questions and answers from the public, because they are due to issue a final report to the select board at the end of October. So this is sort of midway now. They want to check in with the public, tell you what they're thinking so far, and get a lot of feedback back. So we really encourage attendance on June 4th. I did attend the National Trust for Historic Preservation announcement, where their director said, quote, "Our heritage is more important than private jets." It was a very well attended, interesting event at the Old Manse. And TAC is redoing the scope for the transportation study. You'll be hearing more about that. And the bike share was launched for the season. They want to thank the Fowler Library for sponsoring a great kickoff event at Bradford Mill. And finally, Public Works had an annual water sewer rate hearing. Water rates had to go up 12% this year because of the PFAS and the NAGOG, and they hadn't gone up in several years. Sewer rates are going to go up 5%. And the MCI revenue is worth about $700,000 to $1 million per year. That's going to be a loss That's going to be made up by ratepayers between the years probably FY 28 through 31.
Is water turn or?
Water, thank you. That's the water.
Yeah. Well,
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
thank you. Okay, Mark.
Sure, I have a few things. I wanted to call people's attention to a program coming up this Thursday evening at the Goodwin Forum of the main library. It's a program on the life of Benjamin Ralph Kim Lau, presented by Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Love. This is a Chinese American aviator at the United States Air Force bomber pilot, native son of Concord, who is recently being recognized, and it's really an opportunity. That's co-sponsored by the National Guard, the museum, the Concord Free Library, and the DEI Commission is promoting that. Also coming up in the next few weeks are Race Amity Day, which is going to be celebrated on June 8th, and I'm going to turn to my colleagues because I need to be out of town that day, and we have a proclamation that we approved before that we needed somebody to read. That would be, well, it's a Saturday, June 8th, 12:30 at Alcott School. So if someone is able to do that, and also Juneteenth, we're planning the same celebration and flag raising that we did last year, and that would be on the Circle. It's a Wednesday morning this year. So those are a couple of things from the DEI Commission. The Warner's Pond Task Force has been meeting. I would encourage anybody who's interested in the ins and outs of dredging to review the recording of the last meeting. It was a very detailed look at the 2018 dredging report, and also some of the findings, some work by one of the task force members, Keith Hannon, who's from the Army Corps of Engineers, but is a resident and working as the Friends of Warner's Pond, but really analyzing what some of the key parameters around a dredging project would be, and calling attention to some of those things. Many people would know that there was an RFP for dredging Warner's Pond that came back extremely high in 2022, well beyond our budgeted resources, and so that had to be set aside. And this is good information about some of the reasons for that that we'll probably be revisiting as we think about what the.
Was there any update on the cost, or just
no? There's no. It's more
science in the process.
Yeah, more. You know, what are the details? The transportation of the sediments is part of it. The different techniques that are involved, and some of the other things that it may have impacted why that was so far out of range. So is it? And there'll be more work on that going forward as the task force continues. And another recording that might be of interest is I got an opportunity to attend the Holocaust Remembrance at last Sunday, May 5th, and Werner Salinger, who's connected to Concord, and really talked about the impact of the Holocaust as a first-person account. He was born in Berlin in 1932 and was a refugee himself. So those were a few of the sort of more events that we've been at the last couple of times, and I think that's going to be it for me.
Thank you.
I do not have any to report.
I'll say a few things. I went to the planning board meeting, and they were working on their FY 24-25 goals, and they had quite a long list, and I encouraged them to shorten the list so they could focus more on parking, because parking is something that we've been looking at and then realizing it's very complicated, and we look at something else instead. So I think we really should take a hard look at parking, because parking is one of the things that's preventing some economic development here in town. We've got some empty storefronts coming up. We've always had turnover in villages, and getting people to move into those vacant things. Parking is a big indicator of whether we can invite people, or whether people are interested in filling empty storefronts. Also, some of our housing proposals are impacted by our parking requirements. So our parking requirements, I don't think they've been looked at for years, decades. So I'm encouraging them to look at those this year and bring something to town meeting. The chair's breakfast will be held this Wednesday morning. It's hybrid. It will be at 8:30. It's usually at 8. I'm moving it to 8:30. So I hope people can attend that. That's always a good time. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that the 250th Executive Committee will be here at the Select Board on June 3rd. And the 2229 Main Street Committee will be here on June 17th to give us an update. So, okay, next item. The date for the special town election. Cara, you want to come up and talk to us about that?
Yes. Thank you. Town clerk, and I had intended to talk about requesting that the select board approve ballot language this evening and also set a date for this special town election to take the last step in the process of accepting or adopting the provisions of Chapter 93 of the Acts of 2022, which is the permanent senior means tested property tax exemption. However, today I learned that the one occasion when we can include a fair and concise summary of a question on a ballot is this. So when we approve a state law or a special act of legislature, we have to include that summary, which has to be provided by town council, which I do not have for you tonight. So I'm asking that you delay voting on a date and voting the ballot question language. The ballot question language has to be voted by the select board and provided to the town clerk's office at least 35 days before the election. The 35th day before the June 18th election would be tomorrow. So that can happen. So I'm asking, and I apologize for not having that.
Carrie, but I thought the other issue was also the date of the election. In other words, we wanted to have it as late as we can, with the hope that we might have some non-binding referendum questions on there for the town meeting study committee. But we didn't want to have it too late that people that are eligible for the senior means exemption would miss some kind of a deadline and then not get the exemption. So am I right about that? That's
so
also what you're researching?
Yes, and we are in fact researching that because there have been some town meeting votes in the past that have extended the ability with an overlay fund to provide for the exemption.
Okay.
And so we just have to dig a little deeper into what the status is and what the deadlines are. Okay. And I'd like to come back at your next meeting to give you an update.
A week from today.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think, do we need the motion to take?
So,
yeah.
No.
so we have to include an explanation when we're trying to approve state laws, but when we pass our own bylaws, we're not allowed to put an explanation in. So,
Right.
is that what
When we have proposition 2.5, anything related to proposition 2.5, we can't have an explanation. That was the local option, but town council is also looking into whether the fair and concise summary will substitute the need to mail to every voter and the pros and cons.
Okay.
I'm glad you're looking into that. I'm more interested in the date.
Right.
So we'll talk about both of those things next.
Right, because are you pretty certain you'll be ready by a week from today, having all that research finished? Because if not, then it looks like we'll go into July for the election, people will be away.
Well,
It's just,
That's up to the select board to decide what's the most appropriate date for,
Yeah.
especially town election.
well, if
Well,
you're
you said it
ready,
needs 35 days.
yeah,
Well, yes, so there needs to be advance notice, but as
Right.
far as the date, whether July is appropriate, I will say that vote by mail is very popular in Concord.
Mhm.
So a lot of people
okay,
are choosing to get their ballots that way,
mhm.
Okay.
anyway.
but if you are ready by next Monday, that's great.
And if somebody checked off the option of send me every ballot by mail this year, when they
They'll get it.
registered, they'll get one automatically, otherwise they might have to ask for it.
Yes.
Great, okay, thanks.
All right,
We'll see you
thank
next
you.
week.
Okay.
The next item is a public hearing. I happen to be in a butter, so I've got to recuse myself.
What?
We have to wait until.
Oh, we have to wait
Oh,
till 7,
yeah.
thank you.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
so let's jump ahead to the number 9 on our agenda, which is to review and approve the public art on town lawn. Are you gonna do that, Megan?
Yes.
Great, okay, go ahead.
So the request before you this evening, is from the West Concord Cultural District. This is to execute a sidewalk decals art project for West Concord. I don't know if we have anyone.
Yes.
Oh, you do, okay. You wanna come up?
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, these questions, but this, so the select board is the authority of activities in the public way. And the process that we've been implementing this year is for public art in the right of way, which has been a few projects, is to come to the select board to ask for a provisional approval. And then to come back with kind of a really detailed version of what the ask is with a contract and images, etc.
Right.
So there's 2 asks before you this evening. One is for this provisional approval of public art, which is the sidewalk decals on town-owned property in West Concord. And the second is to actually install one of them, to test it, to see how it's gonna work. So we do actually have these still being reviewed by Concord Public Works. Typically, we wouldn't bring it to you until that has been thorough. So the motion, I think, before you is pending their approval. But this is the request of the West Concord Cultural District was a little bit time sensitive because they were hoping to have this test item installed prior to some of the spring activities in the village.
And I understand, there's some images of what we're talking about on page 48 in the packet, might be able to put on the screen.
And so Megan, is this just an approval for this one test?
Right.
And then they'll come back for the 30?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But are you comfortable with this
The
concept? Because
Okay.
if not, then we won't go
Okay.
forward with kind of scoping it out. So it's a kind of a pulse check.
Can I give us a fuller idea of what the
Sure,
project is?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, I'm here for Ann Moak, who's really in charge of this project, and she couldn't come tonight.
And what's your name?
My name is Sue Beck.
And your address?
This was
Sorry, we keep interrupting you. Your address.
190 Prairies.
Thank you.
Okay. This is something that Anstar in Winchester, and it's a company that will take original art that is photographed and then put onto these decals, and then the decals go on the sidewalk. And her plan, her idea is we'll have it for the 250th anniversary and have them in a loop, a sort of a Freedom Trail walk around West Concord that will be in place for 6 months. And she's been in contact with the schools, the teachers, the art teachers at the elementary schools, and are on board with this. The school board has offered their professional photographer to take pictures. She's got artists and historians lined up to help choose the winners. So she's really quite amazing with this whole thing. And we would definitely talk to the different businesses in West Concord to make sure they're okay with having one near their business. But she's figured they would be about 14 feet apart and go in a nice loop right around the whole business district of West Concord. So the first one, we would like to have advertising the poetry phone booth, which is going to be put in place on May 18th. And it would sort of point the way to the poetry phone booth. And then we'll be able to watch and make sure that it holds up to weather and traffic and everything else before we decide to go ahead with the project.
And when is West Concord Day?
Next Saturday.
The fall.
The 18th is our Spring into Concord Day.
So this pilot will be installed before Saturday?
Well, we were hoping to, but I don't think it will. But at least it will be there to point to the poetry phone, which is going to be in place by May 18th.
All right.
And that's a project that we're putting near the Bruce Freeman Trail, and that's going to be area poets have donated, have
Right.
submitted their poems, and that's going to be in place.
So Sue, this particular project with the decals, I remember when I was at your meeting, they seem to be expensive.
Well, they
So-
came way down in price.
Okay.
Now they're $38 a piece,
How much?
$38
For the decal?
per decal.
Okay, but then you've got to.
Now, we haven't decided on the number of them yet, and that's something we have to talk about, because if we put in as many as Ann wanted, it would be a large part of the budget.
Okay,
But we can always tone that down and not do as many.
okay.
And we also discovered that, we were originally gonna have volunteers put them in, they have to be applied with a heat gun.
Mhm.
We were gonna have volunteers do that, but we found out that we can't do that, so we'll have to pay labor for
Right,
the Department of Public Works to do it, so that's still in flux. We
Okay.
haven't, that part of the project.
When you have a budget, you have to manage.
We have a budget,
Yeah.
we have to manage,
Yes.
so.
And none of this is permanent. I mean, this is all stuff that,
Yes, it's temporary.
This would
yeah, it's all
be-
temporary.
These
I mean,
would
it's
be there
for a
6
point in time,
months.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
6 months are you talking about?
She's planning on, having them put in April of 2025. And they'd be in place for 6 months after that.
They have to be in warm weather. They have to be
Yeah,
installed in warm weather.
is there a way they can go in the beginning of April when it's still kind of cool out?
Yeah, they'll be going,
Before the big.
they're gonna go in, before they'll be
Yeah.
in place by Patriots Day and whatever. and then
All right.
festivities.
Is it fair to assume that we'll have an understanding of how easily they come off and what kind of?
Yes, that's why we're doing it.
Before we-
We're told it's very
before we-
easy,
Okay.
but we didn't want to take everybody's word for it. And in Winchester, they said they did hold up for 6 months, and they do it quite often. They replace them every year. They do it with art from area kids.
So right now, we would be approving one for a test.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We ready?
It's worth trying.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Especially if the art is in diverse areas and they're just not a public way. That's a good idea. Okay, so.
Move to approve the request for provisional approval for sidewalk decals on town-owned property in West Concord, and to approve the request to install one test decal at the corner of Commonwealth and Harold Street in West Concord to be removed no later than October 31st, 2024, pending approval from Public Works, from Concord Public Works.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Very good.
thank you, Sue.
Thank you very much.
Is it 7 o'clock? It's 6:57. We are. Get used to it.
We could probably do,
Yeah, this next one is
we
short.
could do the appropriation of excess and deficiency funds for Minuteman.
No, that's gonna take a little while.
Is it?
Yep.
That's okay, you have to start at 7 or later.
Okay, we can do that.
I just am not sure if Nikki is here yet.
Yeah.
I think she was gonna be on Zoom, and then I will see.
Well, we could tell jokes until 7.
Sorry, I'm gonna ask a naive question. It says here on the agenda. Assignments in the meeting packet.
Yeah.
Which packet?
Oh, it's posted on the website.
Oh, it is on the website, okay, because I got the agenda, but I didn't.
I'll help you
Okay.
navigate there.
All right.
It's done.
Oh, so you don't know your assignments, don't you?
No, I only know what I submitted. Yeah.
I can resend
What's that?
it. It's
in your email, too.
Resend it.
It's in my email.
Yeah.
I guess I missed that. I apologize.
You just go on.
Is it possible that Nikki is on page 2 of?
I was.
Yeah.
I can't see that.
They usually have that screen on.
I know.
You wanna be the chair for this hearing?
I don't like it. I don't care.
I'm gonna go.
Megan, are you prepared to connect my
Upstairs is-
advance? Because Carrie said she was going to speak on it.
We have, Nikki is coming, I just don't think that she's on yet, but also at this point, it's 6:59.
Yeah.
We can go. We're gonna go to public hearing. So
Okay.
we're gonna open the public hearing.
Sure.
And I'm gonna stay there. because otherwise-
Okay. All right. So we're gonna note that Mary Hartman has recused herself as an abutter to this particular item, and I'm going to make a motion to reopen, because this is the public hearing that we postponed, to reopen the public hearing for a granting location request for CMLP and Verizon New England for a poll petition at 1053 Main Street.
Second.
And did we do a roll call? No.
No, we don't.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Chuck Crosby, the election engineer for the Town of Concord Work Department. Welcome new members, Deputy Town Manager, Shannon and Andrew. Good.
Jeff, I'm gonna ask you to speak up just a
Oh,
little
sure.
bit.
I'm used to having the mic, so.
People behind you are
Sure.
gonna wanna hear what you have to say as well as the.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yep. Again, I'm just Jeff Cosner from the Lake Department. I'm just here to present the poll petition for relocation of pole 100 Main Street. Just so you know, I'm also joined here by the Assistant Director from the Lake Plant, Joseph Rapal, and I also have the developer of this project. This pole relocation surrounds from EMS Development, Nat Seppi, who's also online as well, and be happy to answer any questions. So going back to 2023, last year, we were approached by the developer, Nat Seppi from EMS Development, who's working on a new project, which is proposing 4 new units at 80X Main Street. There's a parcel located next to 1053 Main Street. 1053 is also a part of this project as well. It's just noted as a separate parcel. The one thing that came up, during this discussion with Mr. Seppi was that there's limited frontage at the parcel at 80X, which would be the entrance to this development. Just the way it was laid out back in the 1800s. So with that said, the pole 100 is almost precisely right in the middle of where the proposed entrance to the site could be. Wasn't very, thought out back in the day, but we're trying to resolve this issue at this time.
Shannon, can you put up page 43?
Is that the map?
Yeah.
Not working.
Awesome.
We're seeing file folder.
What?
The Zoom meeting is showing your May 13th file folder. Yeah. That's got it.
You got it?
Yeah. Thanks.
So as you can see, the pole 100 to be removed and the proposed pole 100 location. Just to give you some more bearings on this location, this is across from Concord Green, and it's diagonal from the Main Street entrance known as Sparta Drive. Just to give you some bearings on the, where we're looking to move. The proposed location is still on the same side of the road, approximately 15 feet away. As you can see, it's set back a little bit from its existing location. This is to basically to adhere to any sidewalk regulations they have to meet, as far as CPW has set forward. Just some background, this pole is a joint-owned pole between CMLP and Verizon. Most of the poles within town are joint-owned poles. This pole does reside in CMLP's set area. The pole is roughly divided by Route 2 as the corridor. Typically, any poles south of Route 2 are at CMLP's not discretion, but basically anything that's damaged, anything has to be relocated that falls on the responsibility of CMLP. Anything north of typically of Route 2 would be on Verizon. Last year, we did meet with the developer. We set up a meeting on site with Verizon, Comcast, and CMLP. All the utility representatives were in agreement that this pole could be relocated to the proposed location shown on the plan with no issues. This pole would also act as the new underground feed going into the development as well. A couple of questions that came up today, received a couple of phone calls. One of them was cost, as this project is being presented by the contractor moving forward with EMS development, all costs would fall on the contractor. One of the reasons we're here today to seek permission to relate to this pole is that it's beyond 3 feet. 3 feet's always been the general rule with the select board. Anything beyond that, we come here to a hearing and to present and ask to relocate this pole. If there's any questions from myself, Mr. Rapab or Mr. Seppi, be happy to discuss.
Just one. So I think you mentioned this, but number 1053, which it's moving closer to, is currently also part of this project and owned by the same developer. So there's no objection from that property owner to having a pole closer to their structure.
That is correct.
Okay. Is there any more questions from the board?
It's well documented.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
Yeah.
Ms. Harden? Oh, okay.
Stephen Bader, 7 River Street. From my reading of the plan, and I couldn't hear exactly what you were saying,
Sure.
but it looks like the pole is planted in the middle of the sidewalk. And even if it's on the edge of the sidewalk, there are other places in town, like next to the library, where you've got a guide wire stabilizing that, blocks either snow plows or baby carriages or whatever. So I just want to make sure that that it isn't located where it blocks free passage.
Absolutely, and it's a great question. The plan doesn't clearly show these. Yeah,
it looks to me.
Yep. So the sidewalk actually is being relocated. They have to actually bump the sidewalk out for regulations. Okay. So it'll be relocated, and we'll have a guide that will be on private property, but we don't rent a city. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
So on the image we were seeing, the guy would be towards the house and away from the road.
That's correct.
Sure.
My name is Mary Hartman. I live at 16 Concord Green, Unit 6. And I'm here because I live in a large condominium community. We have 220 units there. So 220 people got this notice. And it says here that we're going to relocate utility pole 100 approximately 15 feet southeast from its existing location with one new JO pole to one existing JO pole. So as an abutter in my home, I get this piece of paper and I don't know where pole 100 is. And I don't know what a JO pole is, right? So I'm wondering if in the future, it would be helpful if like that map that you had up there would be very helpful.
Sure.
So that people, when they get this in the mail, the communication from the town is a little bit more user friendly, so they understand what, where this is and what's a JO pole.
So it's a joint pole. So it's between Verizon and the town of Concord. So they own 50% and we own 50%.
Joint owned.
So joint owned.
Okay, but you see.
Oh, certainly understood.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, if suggestion going forward when we have these public notices, when people get notices from the town, we want them to take it seriously instead of just.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think if we made it a little bit clearer, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Be happy to expand in the future.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just so people are aware of what Mr. Cosgrove was alluding to, the poles in town are owned jointly by CMLP and Verizon, and there's a division, a geographical division between the generally south of Route 2 versus north of Route 2, where Verizon is responsible for actually physically putting the poles in the ground and maintaining them in one section, and CMLP takes responsibility for physically maintaining the poles in the other section. So in this case, we're dealing with a pole which is actually maintained by CMLP, but is joint owned by both organizations. So that's just a brief explanation of what joint ownership actually means.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Do we see any comments on Zoom?
No.
This? No. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, aye. So the hearing is closed. We can move to a motion to approve the granted location request for CMLP and Verizon New England for pole petition at 1053 Main Street as included in the select board meeting packet.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next.
Yeah.
Nikki is. Yeah, so I just asked her. Right, she is unmuted.
Hi, would you like me to turn my video on?
Oh, please.
Okay, it says I'm unable to, I believe.
Oh, okay, if you're unable to, then you don't need to.
No.
You can't be done.
Oh, let me try, okay, let me try one more time.
We can see you.
Hi, how are you? I'm just gonna message the interim superintendent, Kevin Mahoney, was going to join as well. I'm gonna see if he's. So do you all have a copy of the letter that was sent?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I don't know if I should give him a minute to hop on, but I can, start. Thank you for the consideration of presenting tonight. We did send a letter to the select board. This process did start back, last year, and we met with our town managers of all of our 9-member towns this fall in October to start the process of the $771,000 excess Chapter 70 funds received. We met with them, discussed some options. Currently with our MSBA project, we have a ban of approximately $2.8 million. And we are estimating to get back approximately $2.2 million. So the difference is about the 565 that's noted in the memo. What we had planned to do was in future, subsequent fiscal years, pay that debt over a 5-year period. The interest on that would have been approximately $150,000. So when we talked to all the town managers, they had agreed that it would be, in the best interest to pay down the remaining debt when we close out the MSBA project, which we're slotted for in the fall. That would finally close out our building project, as well as saving in some subsequent fiscal years additional debt and some interest along the way as well. This was presented to all the town managers who were in agreement. This was also presented to the Concord Finance Committee. And it was discussed at depth at that Finance Committee meeting too. So I just wanted to be kind of clear and transparent about that. We had been, notifying and keeping everyone aware of the situation. Why it did happen was Minuteman does have to vote our budget a significant amount early due to our regional agreement. So when we voted our budget, we didn't have the governor's budget yet, due to when the governor came in around March. So the second part of the letter is...
Nikki, I want to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Let's just stop there for a minute before you get into the second part.
Absolutely.
The transfer from the excess and deficiency fund. So this puts you at 2.6%.
Correct.
Okay. What is your target for the percent for the E&D?
Our school committee goal is 3 to 5%. We are not allowed to exceed the 5%.
Your goal is 3 to 5%?
Correct.
Okay, and this brings you down to 2.6, but I guess you thought it was worth it to save the interest. Am I
Yes.
understanding that correctly?
I thought I also picked up from this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were expecting to be able to replenish to close to the 5% by the end of the fiscal year.
Absolutely.
So if they don't spend it, if they don't use these funds in some way, they'll be over 5%, which they can't be.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, yeah.
So when is that gonna happen? Explain that, how are you gonna get back to the 5%?
We did a projected analysis based on where our current certified E&D is. And the excess revenue that was unbudgeted, such as interest income this year, significantly higher than we had anticipated in previous year due to the market. And some other unbudgeted revenues. And then we have experienced some payroll savings in our current FY24 budget as well. And that plays in part with the second part of our memo as well.
Okay, we can keep going.
I have a question about it. So you're paying off this ban early and saving on interest. And I don't understand, it's about 600,000 that you're paying off. Is that coming from E&D or is it coming from the excess state revenue?
Well, we received excess state revenue, but that will fall to our E&D because it was revenue that was, that wasn't budgeted correctly. So the school committee did vote, and using our E&D, it was approved by our school committee. We are notifying and asking permission of our towns. It will not change your member assessment. We'll be amending the budget by that 771, and we'll be increasing the use of our E&D by that same amount.
Okay,
Got it. Thanks.
ready to go on? Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Nikki, keep going.
So part of our year-end closeout, looking at our third quarter and projecting through year end, we are seeing some anticipated savings this year. And part of our budget planning was to assess and potentially reallocate some of those funds that we are seeing some savings on. So in particular, we saw some pretty big buckets in our health insurance line, which we also discussed with the finance committee. While we had budgeted a 10% increase, it came in as a 0%. So due to the savings in the premiums, we were seeing some excess funds that we weren't planning on in that line. We also saw some utility savings, and which is great. And we've also reflected our FY25 budget to recognize that as well. There was a decrease in our utility lines in our FY25 budget. And lastly, we saw some savings in our teacher line. As you know, we have a number of very veteran, experienced staff, and we had some retirements and some new hires this year. So that has resulted in some savings as well. So due to those three major areas, we were assessing and looking at our budget and wanted to reallocate some of those savings to a stabilization fund, our capital stabilization fund, as well as OPEB. Currently, our OPEB is around $23 million. We have just under $1 million or so. And, we want to make some strides towards that. So our school committee did meet and will be increasing our contribution in the FY26 budget, but this will help towards that liability.
So how much is going to, let me see, I'm reading this again. So 463,000 is going to the capital stabilization and 400 is going to OPEB. But it seems like OPEB is the one that really needs it, right?
Yeah, it's not right. It's not right.
So, our OPEB is is currently funded. It's around, with the FY25 budget being approved, it's at 5.1% funded. With this contribution, it would be close to 6.2% funded. But we did want to be aware, we did mention to and present to our finance committee about one of the buildings on our property, in particular, our east building. That building is on our campus, and currently we are concerned with the like the roofing and the outer edges, you know, the stability, I guess, of the building. So in order to be able to use that in the future, you know, we've had some different ideas, and Superintendent Mahoney can certainly chime in if he'd like, about potentially using that in the future and what we would be using it for. So we want to make sure that stays a great asset of the building and doesn't start deteriorating.
Yeah, I have no problem with doing the work on that building. I think the work that you do over there is just great. What I'm a little bit concerned about is that we're taking excess operating funds and we're using them to offset future debt authorizations. Is that accurate?
It would be a saving. So our capital, it is a capital stabilization, so it would fall under the capital category. It wouldn't necessarily be debt or anything that we would take out, but we're trying to build our fund there. So in the future, if something does happen with that building, we wouldn't have to assess any of our member towns for it.
But if you had to make improvements to that building, which is, I'm assuming is in your horizon, you would most likely fund that with debt?
Our plan would be to fund it with the capital stabilization, but I will let Mr. Mahoney speak as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, yes, it's here.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. I think that what we're trying to do here is be mindful of trying to establish capital reserve funds, as well as start to move towards OPEB. Our focus over the last number of years prior to the building being built was getting that building built. And now that we've been in there, it'll be 5 years. And we haven't really set aside any type of a capital stabilization fund, meaningful capitalization stabilization fund. So we've been moving forward with funding it at $500,000 a year for the past couple of years. In the FY25 budget, we recommended an additional $350 on top of that $500,000 for a total of $850. So right now it's with that. You know, when the budget's finalized, we go into July 1, it'll have a balance there of roughly $2.8 million. And we're engaging a firm to do a capital facilities plan over 10 years, so we can start to do some of our preventative maintenance planning to keep up with some of the building needs. As it relates to the east building, we do have some thoughts about how we want to utilize that asset moving forward. And some of the capital stabilization we're looking to set aside, we'd like to use for that building. And we're looking at it as a couple of different opportunities that we might be able to take advantage of, whether it's to permanently house our animal science program, which really wasn't accommodated for in our in the main school facility. And we're looking to see if there are some partnership opportunities. We're exploring some opportunities with Lesley University that may bring about a potential partnership in other entities, whether they're in the biotech space or other lab space that they want to collaborate on investing in that property. So we want to make sure that as those opportunities present themselves, that we have the funding available, that we can go in and have a meaningful partnership. Whether or not we would have sufficient amount to cover the entire amount of the project, it's unclear right now, maybe unlikely. We'd like to see if there's an opportunity to utilize state grant funding that's set aside for this purpose. But I think we need to position ourselves moving forward to have a capital stabilization reserve fund set aside so that we can move forward. We understand the challenge of having seeking debt authorizations and asking all of our 9-member towns to approve that debt. That's a tough ask. We've experienced that in the past, and we understand that, particularly when we're looking at perhaps utilizing the building in a way that will not necessarily expand enrollment. So we're trying to be meaningful about that. We need to do something with that east building because, as Nikki explained, the roofing in the exterior envelope is falling into disrepair. So we have an asset that's eroding right before our eyes. So we need to do the exterior part of that east building. We need to make sure that we have the funds available. So when we came upon this, I will say, unspent appropriation at the end of the year, it just seemed to make sense if we could put aside a little bit more in our capital stabilization as well as towards the OPEB. Those are recommendations that really invest in sort of the future of some of our goals rather than just trying to reallocate it by capital equipment or other such things that we could do.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I've got one last question. You said that it's the total allowable contribution to the stabilization fund. Is that allowable? Is that DESI that tells you how much you can have in your capital stabilization fund? How do you determine what's allowable?
Yes, it's DESI in the Department of Revenue. It's there's a calculation that it's 5% of your prior year member assessments.
Okay, great, thank you.
I mean, my only question, it's a question, maybe an observation, but just, all of it makes sense, just the pathway on the unfunded liability, like it's just a big number. So I get you're trying to balance all these things, but maybe if you could just comment on sort of hey, I get, still $22.5 million out there, and how you're thinking about that, or have there been some projections on what you could do in that area?
We, the school committee engaged a subcommittee that took a look at this. And I think that subcommittee operated maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Nikki can correct me if I'm wrong. But
it was the winter of 21, sorry.
And what the subcommittee looked at is to see if there's a way that we could start to fund that in a more meaningful, aggressive way. And so we've been ramping up on that since fiscal 22 to try and increase our commitment to OPEB, with knowing that, and I think it's FY25, Nikki, or FY26, we have an old OPEB ESCO lease that was taken out on the old building for some energy efficiency projects. And we're still paying on the lease, even though the building's gone, a so-called stranded asset. So we've been carrying that on our books now for maybe about $500,000 a year or something like that. And so I think that the plan moving forward is that we continue our funding commitment that we're currently at this year and next year, and allocate some of that ESCO lease funding that will when the lease ends after fiscal 25 to recommit towards the OPEB fund. We think that'll be more of a meaningful contribution to that moving forward.
Thanks,
Nikki. Did I miss any details?
Yeah, so I'll just add to that. Kevin is correct. Our ESCO lease, the last year's FY25 and 26, the school committee, the OPEB subcommittee voted to add an additional $300,000 one time because the ESCO lease falls off. In each year after that, increase it by 5%. If you look at that, we would be fully funded by FY 46, which would be 20 years. So, this contribution does help, each little bit we can reallocate towards it will certainly help reach that goal sooner.
Any questions on Zoom? See any hands raised on Zoom?
Is it? Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, yeah.
Move to approve the Minuteman School Committee appropriation of $771,211 from its certified excess and deficiency fund and reallocate unspent FY24 budget in the amount of $863,489.
Discussion? I would like to see, going forward, a little bit more emphasis on OPEB, because we are kicking the can down the road, and I know you've got a revenue source from the lease available to you, but that's not in FY26. So I'll vote to approve this, but I would like to just voice my concern with the fact that I think that OPEB should be more aggressively funded, and we're funding our capital needs ahead of that. So I just want to make that statement.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Did you have a second?
Do I have a second?
You have a second.
Yeah, second.
There we go. It is sitting here over there.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, we're almost right on time. It would be the post-town meeting debrief with Carmen Reese, the moderator.
Good evening, everyone. Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street, Town Moderator. The Deputy Town Manager has already briefed you on the numbers of attendees that we had each evening of town meeting. I have debriefed the meeting with town staff and with our public safety folks. And in general, things went well from a staff perspective. We certainly noted a few glitches here and there that we are focused on putting processes in to avoid next year. And some of the things were, we had a little bit of a bottleneck on circulation in the check-in area and picking up handouts. We could fix that. We need a little bit better coordination on when to open the overflow area than we had this year. We had some technical nits that we'll try and solve next year. We had some complaints about the timeliness of the availability of motions, and so we'll try and put some process changes in effect.
Didn't quite timeliness of availability.
The availability of motions. People like to see what the motions are going to look like in advance of the meeting. Gotcha. And there have been in years past, we had produced a motions document that had all the motions that were going to be made under all the articles in a single document. And so we've discussed putting that back into place for the next annual town meeting, so that it means moving up some deadlines a little bit and getting people focused on getting their motions written. And then we would get those posted on the website earlier, and there would be a single handout with all the motions in it. Might reduce the number of little pieces of paper that are floating around that people have to pick up and have for a particular article.
Right. The other thing that we did differently this year that contributed to that, in the public hearings, we didn't have the motions like we usually do. So I think if we go back to doing that, because even in March and the beginning of April, people were looking for the motions and they weren't. We couldn't refer back to the public hearing to find them.
Yes, I think that is a really good point, and I will also say that the fact that we didn't have PowerPoint presentations on a lot of the articles put us way behind the 8 ball in terms of, Shannon and I can attest to the scrambling that we did in the 10 days before the meeting to make sure everything was reviewed and in place, and it would have been easier if people had prepared.
And for the boards and committees as well.
Yes, for sure, for sure. We also had
a little bit of a glitch, and people were alarmed at the thought that the buses might stop driving people out at 9:30 when the meeting was gonna go. So we'll make sure that we don't have that problem next year. In fact, the buses did run, but there seemed to be a little bit of a miscommunication between the police department and the bus people. But we'll fix that. And boy, we had a lot of paper this year. I'm not sure how we address that, but we'll be brainstorming about that going forward to see if there's anything at all that we can do.
The one other thing that I noticed was some traffic bottlenecks coming into the school because I had never noticed this before, but even before 6 o'clock, there was a lot of confusion driving into the school and parking, and it had to do with the athletic events getting dismissed. Maybe because school starts later than it used to, and I don't know exactly what it was.
It is athletic events.
I know my daughters,
Oh,
they were exiting all the theater practices like at 6:30 or something.
I don't know that there's anything we can do.
Well, what I want to recommend is that, because I talked to some police officers and they don't start the detail till 6. So, or even later. So if they start at 5:30 or 5:45, I think it would make a huge difference.
We can certainly have that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the documentation of the town meeting, in prior years, we've put the PowerPoint, the presentations for the hearings online so that they could be referenced. And I know that for those of us that go back over years, the ability to pull up an actual presentation from town meeting in a later year to look at what was said. And I know we can go back and watch endless hours on YouTube if we really want to, but there's really no substitute for getting that. And I noticed that the only public hearing presentations that are actually online, even at this stage, are 34, 35, 36, and 37, all from the planning board, which of course deserves kudos for their level of preparation for town meeting and what they did for us for the MTA.
Some of that, of course, has to do with the fact that there weren't PowerPoint presentations on most of the articles.
Yeah, I think so, but I think that even now, if we could manage to get the presentations that were actually presented, and add that back, so just from an archive perspective, it's really useful to be able to go back over the years and see what actions we've done.
I'm gonna look at Shannon and say I don't think that's a big problem.
No, I don't, but when I'm wondering, I thought for like the FinCom ones, it linked to their meeting packet. Are you saying that is not sufficient?
The prior practice was to actually have the individual articles. And so if you were going to look for the enterprise budget hearing presentation about CMLP's budget, you could just find that without having to wade back through, again, the finance committee packets are like our packets that are hundreds of pages long and navigating to.
It is much easier to
I was gonna say, I could
go find the article and then go right to the presentation.
Right.
It's much easier to do.
They do, I hear you, but I will credit you. They have much better packets than we do. They have cover pages for their items, and it's really easy to find their stuff, but no, we can do this.
Looking at it at the moment, I'm not seeing this. I just think we should probably try and figure that out so that there's a relatively consistent way to get at that. And if we don't have the right documents this time around, then something, we're used to the fact that it's evolved over time.
Yeah, I think that we certainly could go back to doing that. There were 2 or 3 years in a row where we had a separate folder for every article on the town meeting warrant, and the PowerPoint presentations and any handouts were dumped in each folder, so that if you wanted to know what was going on under Article 20, you could click on that and find everything there. Some of we really were pretty pressed before the meeting, and so that's some of the reason that didn't happen this year. But we plan to be less pressed next year. That's the plan. So we will note that down. We'll put those folders on the website, and I think that we should be able to do that after the fact also for.
And there was a lot of discussion about attendance, and we've already heard the numbers, but how does that compare, say, to last year's attendance and maybe the year before? If you have them.
Yeah, so we had, I don't remember the precise numbers off the top of my head, but we have had in the past couple of years, we've had some kind of higher interest articles, so that on the first night, we've had a pretty substantial attendance, like close to 1,000. 1,100 was definitely more than we have had in the last couple of years. We have had a couple of other years where we've had to get to night 3 or even night 4, and the attendance definitely dwindles on night 3. And it's even worse if we have to get to night 4. But it definitely dwindles, and 400 is about average for what we would expect to see on a night 3. I think that the second night this year, with attendance of just short of 1,000, was better than what we've typically had for a second night. And we had the high interest article scheduled for that night, and there were some other high interest things that we didn't get to on the first night that ended up being shifted to the second night. So they were kind of comparable in terms of the level of public interest on those 2 nights.
Sorry, do we expect the study committee would have changes that would go in place for next year? Like, will there be recommendations that
very possibly? Yeah, I mean, things that don't need. Well, let me move on to the town meeting study committee and talk a little bit about that.
Can I finish with this debrief before we go on to that?
Sure. The surveys were distributed, kind of a disappointing response rate, but we're still waiting and hoping that more will come in, so that the survey is still posted on the website. People can still answer it, and we're still hopeful that we'll get more responses. And we'll wait another couple of weeks, and then we'll do a summary of those results, and we'll let you know what we got for results out of that survey. And where the survey was put together in a little bit different way this year, in the hopes that the information would be useful as a kind of jumpstart for the town meeting study committee. Some kind of more maybe kind of motivational questions, and some challenge questions, like what makes it hard for you to get here, what would make it better, and some informational questions. Which of these sources did you look at to find information about town meeting, and some other general questions, like, did you feel like you knew what was going on when you arrived at town meeting, or were you scrambling to catch up on what the issues were? So let's just hope that we get a little better feel for how people are doing, and what they are frustrated by, and what they, how we can reach them better. And so that's as always, we'll think about, is there any way to reduce the paper? I don't know, but it's on the list. So that's kind of the debrief on.
I have one comment. I just really appreciated that you moved it along so that we didn't go into the 4th night. I was really worried we were going to go to the 4th night, and it's hard for people to get there. Everyone's tired and grumpy, and it was great that we didn't have to do that.
Yeah, and I think that it made a difference for the select board to go to 10:15 instead of 10. It just gave us that extra half hour.
Yeah.
And it is rough. It's rough to go past 10, but it's even worse to go to the 4th night, I think. But that it's a tough call, and I thought the select board made the right call on that this year to just.
Thank you for recommending it. That 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's just helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also noticed that we got down to business a little bit more promptly than sometimes too, which
yes,
should be cheaper.
Yeah.
So when you were here, I think it was the meeting where we talked about ordering the articles.
Yes.
We talked about could you get your advice on the difference between who sponsors an article, who moves an article, what committees are allowed to put an article directly on the warrant, which committees have to go through. And we seemed to get confused about that last year. We just kind of kept going. So is there, I guess I'm looking for your advice as far as how we get clear on what is the role of the select board as far as sponsoring an article. Can articles be put on by committees that are established by the select board, or do they have to go through the select board? Or is that something we need to work out for ourselves?
Oh, I can certainly help you with that in terms of what the state law is. You know, in general, the select board's gatekeeper on what goes onto the warrant. There are, you know, it depends on which town council you talk to, whether there's some statutory committees that might have a statutory right to put something on the warrant, like the planning board perhaps, or the community preservation committee.
Right.
But that's kind of about it. And in general, and there's also, there would be an argument, I think, and town council would be pretty uncomfortable with the select board being the gatekeeper for the school committee, because there is a statutory obligation on the part of the town to have a school budget, and a statutory obligation for the school committee to create it and ensure that it's appropriated. So those are probably the committees really that have the right to put things on. In some towns, it's different, where the finance committee is specifically authorized or charged under bylaw and so forth to, or in the charter even, to put things on the warrant. But we don't have that structure here, you know, we haven't. In our history, so far as I'm aware, it's been the select board that puts the articles there. So you know, it's you know,
That's good to know. But the language, I think we get mixed up about the language. What does it mean to sponsor? Does that somehow mean you're supporting an article, or does that just mean you let it go on the warrant?
It doesn't, and that's actually a new designation that we didn't even used to have in the warrant. I'm not sure how that happened.
Okay.
You know, from our perspective, I think from a staff side, as we're trying to get the warrant ready and get town meeting off the ground, the sponsor is who you nag when you don't have something. Okay, and that's really who the sponsor is. You know, who is responsible for giving us this PowerPoint? Who is responsible for the handout? Why don't we have this motion yet? And how much time do you need? And who's coming to the town meeting coordination meeting to talk about how long you're going to present for? Those are kind of the, you know, who does town council talk to if there's an issue with what you're proposing to do? So that's really who the sponsor is. And you know, whoever puts the article on the town meeting warrant, any registered voter in Concord can remove it. That's the only requirement. You have to be a registered voter. That's it. So, you know, we have a lot of traditions, you know, the finance committees, the chair of the finance committee traditionally makes certain motions. The chair of the select board traditionally makes certain motions. Many committees like the Public Works Commission and the Light Board and the Planning Board will rotate among their members responsibility for making a motion and doing a presentation on an article, so the burden doesn't fall exclusively on the chair. And that's always been left to those committees to do that however they would like.
Okay, for me, at least, when we come closer to actually opening the warrant, it would be helpful if I could get a refresher on what you just told us.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm wondering.
I think you as chair should just meet with.
I did
it.
Well, also, yeah, the order, right? How do you think about the order?
The order is absolutely the prerogative of the select board. Yes, you always have a meeting before the warrant, when the warrant closes, before it goes to the printer. There is a meeting that the select board, and typically what the select board has for that meeting is just the table of contents. You don't have the whole warrant because we haven't finished fixing everything yet, and you don't want multiple copies of the warrant floating around generally, multiple versions. So it's usually just that table of contents, and then you sort and decide what makes sense, what logically has to come before what else. You know, you consider staff time, you know, like you wouldn't want to have, you know, you wouldn't want to have the planning department have to be there every night at town meeting because you spread their articles out through the whole warrant, you know, you can think about a lot of things like that.
Attendance levels.
Well, and you think about attendance levels too, if you know that, you know, for example, I know that the select board, when you decided the order this year, we had a couple of significant articles from Public Works, the $50 million bonding issue, and the creation of the stormwater enterprise fund. And those are kind of sleepers because they're new things that the town, people weren't necessarily alert to those. So it's pretty important for those to be in front of the most people that you could get at town meeting. And then we still have the wiggle room to specially schedule something like the MBTA zoning article that clearly is kind of a piqued interest. So, you know, because you never know how we're going to move through the warrant. We do it in order. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you know, you can pinpoint something. So yeah, we certainly can do that.
Yeah, so to avoid some of the confusion we ran into this year about sponsors, movers, things like that, we should have that clear.
Absolutely.
Before, and I guess you and I can.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, from a policy perspective, the select board, you guys are the policy setters for the town, and you're the policy setters for all of our boards and committees. And so on the one hand, the select board wants to support its boards and committees. They're working hard and they've been given a charge to execute. So if they come to you with a warrant article, on the one hand, you want to support them and put their article on the warrant. On the other hand, you've got other policy obligations. And so if you think that the warrant article doesn't make sense to include, then if you have a policy reason not to include it, you don't have to include it. And I'll give you an example. When I was on the board, we had it's now gone, but one of the climate action committees, they've all been changed a little bit now. They came after the budget process was done for the town with an article, and they wanted to appropriate some money for some kind of a study. And we said, you know, you really have to go through the town manager and make that be part of the town budget. And so from a process perspective, we just can't do a random separate appropriation for a particular committee. So please come back with this next year, talk to the town manager early and see if you can get that in the budget, but we're not going to put this on. So it's like that kind of event. So town meeting study committee has been appointed.
Great.
Its first meeting will be Wednesday at 6:30. It has been posted. It'll be a short organizational meeting to get them organized with electing their chair, figuring out how they're going to take minutes. And they'll have an initial conversation, since we have the happy accident of this special town election coming up. They will discuss whether they're ready at this point in their, you know, they won't have even gotten started really, but is there anything that they'd like to piggyback on that,
how many folks are on them?
There are 9 people on the committee together with me as moderator as an ex officio non-voting member. I'm just there as a resource, and I will convene them. And as soon as they elect a chair, I sit in the back. Was
there a lot of people who volunteered, or how did you?
We had a bunch of we had many more people volunteered than we needed on the committee, and so I feel very positive about the degree of diversity and the breadth of skills and experience that we will have on this committee. So we've got 2 moms who have school age or preschool age kids who struggle with getting to town meeting and they really like to come. So we have 2 of those people. We have an IT expert who is actually in the IT department for the town of Wayland and worked at one point in the IT department here in Concord. So she will be great. We have a former select board member. We have a former FinCom person. We have we have a former town moderator, Eric Van Loon, will be on this committee. And we have, Keith Bergman, who is on the Affordable Housing Trust, will be on this committee, and we've already been through the appropriate APP 10 exceptions to being that this is a short-term committee, making the exceptions to have someone serve on 2 committees. 2 other people.
He's a former town manager. You were about to say he's a former town manager.
He is a former town manager. Yes. Yes, he's a former town manager, town administrator, and has a degree from the Kennedy School, and and of course, since I appointed the we've been talking about this committee since last December, and I have been out at any number of public events saying, like, please send me volunteer cards. And we started getting volunteer cards, I think, in February, and more in March and April. And after I already appointed, more people came forward and said, like, of course, I'm really interested. So I've encouraged those people, please come and participate in what the committee is doing, and send emails, come to the meetings, send things to read, and I hope that we'll get some really good public participation.
So now this is a committee that was handled by town meeting and will report to town meeting. So
that is correct.
Independent from the select board.
It is independent from you, except that they will come at the end of November and give you a progress report. The charge calls it a preliminary report, but it's really going to be a progress report. I'm not even sure they'll have anything in writing yet at that point. And the reason for that timing is that, to the extent there are changes they want to put in place that require an article on the warrant, that they can get that in there if they'd like to see it get on the warrant for the next annual town meeting cycle, or if they want to implement electronic voting, for example, for the next town meeting, that they can raise the question of funding for that, and where we find that in the town budget.
But they won't be able to change something that would actually change next year's.
Oh, no, because we have many things. We only have 2 bylaws that govern town meeting. One's on reconsideration, and one's on whether or not we have to count a 2/3 vote. And we just and we've got some other ones that deal with when the warrant has to be posted and how the warrant is posted. But that's really
so if they made recommendations in November that we wanted to change something, it's possible.
No problem. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And process things the moderator can implement. Electronic voting is a process thing that the moderator could implement, except that they need the budget from the town manager.
Will they have a web page?
They already have one.
Okay.
It went up this afternoon.
Right, so all the members are listed?
The members are listed. I can tell you who they are.
All right.
They are Keith Bergman, Katie Bresnick, Eric Moore, Kristen Haggerty, Alice Kaufman, Leslie Koplow, Parashar Patel, Phil Swain, and Eric Van Loon.
Great.
And some of these people are people who've been active in town government. Some of these people, this is their first committee. And I feel like it's we've got a good gender balance, we've got a good age balance, we've got a good geographic balance, we've got different backgrounds, we've got an engineer, an epidemiologist, couple lawyers,
It's just great to see that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the last thing I will say, and I'm sorry to take up so much of your time this evening, it's time to start planning next year's town meeting.
No.
And I would really encourage you.
Welcome to your role.
I really encourage you to get the date picked before the middle of June. The calendar's already set.
Weren't we thinking about it had to be in May because of the
We've had some preliminary conversations with the school department. They don't like that idea. So we'll have a little bit of work to figure out when we will cause the least ruckus in the building to be there. And an interesting question, and this can be something we can talk about with the town meetings, you know, we had done Sunday meetings, we went away from Sunday meetings.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of the Sunday meeting is you get town meeting down to 2 days. That keeps us out of the high school's hair for that third day. And one of the days is not a school day that we're there. So I don't know, there's a lot of things to balance.
How do we decide that? How do we decide that?
How do we decide that?
What day it will be? I mean, how are we gonna?
You decide.
We decide.
Yeah.
So how do we work with the schools to make sure that they're okay with that? We'll figure it out.
Staff to staff has a conversation. Yeah, staff to staff has a conversation, and then more people will have conversations.
But when you recommended May, besides the logistics with the school, are you thinking about the first week of May or the middle of May or the end of May, or you don't really care as long as it's not in April? What is your recommendation in that?
So I think anytime in May is fine. I think that town staff and town council can get a little anxious if you push it too much to the end of the fiscal year, because if anything screws up, you don't have that much time to call a special town meeting and fix it. So I don't think you really want to push it too far into May. So because that June 30th deadline for the fiscal year is something you need to be mindful of.
So ideally, maybe the first half of May, if we can get the logistics worked out.
Right, if we can get the logistics worked out. Right. But, you know, honestly, there's no good time for us to disrupt the lives of the, you know, the life of the high school. So, it's really tough for them to put up with us. I will say, the middle school will open.
Yes, I was thinking.
In the middle of the year, and I would just love to see us have a session of town meeting at the middle school and have it linked. Have those be linked sessions. It would be a whole other parking area. People in West Concord wouldn't have to cross Route 2. You know, there'd be all kinds of good. And I think that auditorium will be large enough. You know, we looked at Harvey Wheeler, and it was going to be like 105 people that we could get at Harvey Wheeler, and it didn't. The cost to do it just wasn't justified for that few people. So we abandoned it. We did look hard at it on how we would put it together, we'll have to wait until the middle school is online to answer the technical questions of whether we can pull it off effectively from a technical perspective and from a cost perspective.
Yeah, I wouldn't be super optimistic about that, just from the perspective of the middle school building committee, because remember, the middle school opens, but later the Sanborn property, the Sanborn building is demolished and the site work happens, and there's quite a bit that goes on after the school technically starts to serve students before it's really ready for public use. And this, we did have a middle school building committee meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and there was a little bit of a back and forth about that difference in capability. You know, there's one thing to have moved in, it's another thing to be able to actually throw a party.
Yeah, you need the furniture and somewhere to park the car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to, you might have to wait another year, but long term, I think that would be a great thing for us to be able to do.
Yeah,
What's the capacity of the auditorium?
275 at the middle school.
I think it's more. Is it like 450?
Oh, I think you're right.
Do you remember?
I think you're right, because we went up.
It went up because I think it accommodates not the whole school, but 2 grades.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be great for 75. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Anything else?
Thank you, Carmen.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will be out of here and let you finish your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the liaison assignments for this fiscal year. Before we actually get into the assignments, I'd like to open it up and have a conversation just about the liaison role and get people's thoughts about how they perform the role, what this is all mean to you, any advice that you have as far as to make it more effective. Anybody?
Well, I think picking up right where we left off a moment ago with the town meeting preparation, one of the key roles is to understand and, you know, keep abreast of what the committees that we're assigned to might be bringing forward to town meeting and communicate the schedule that will get that work done on a timely basis so that they don't miss those windows, because there is a single annual window for work on the warrant, and so the earlier the better. And so as these committees start to spin up now, it's a little bit challenging for committees to understand that, you know, they might get seated, go off for the summer, come back in September, and then you're delivering the message that says you have 60 days to decide what's on the next town meeting warrant is basically what you have to do, because you have to be done with that process by the end of November in order to you know, get in the queue for this year. So it's really not too early for those groups to be looking now at those things and then understanding which ones have financial implications, so that they have a conversation with town staff, with the town manager about budgeting and so forth. So those are that I think is one of the key roles, and then the other role is staffing.
Right.
You know, keeping abreast of how's the committee functioning, and I think we circulated the spreadsheet that has a summary of who nominates. There's a difference in the role of the select board liaison when it's a town meeting manager appointment versus a select board appointment, versus, I guess there are a couple of other.
Right, but look, so one of the roles is when there are vacancies, you can help recruit to try to help fill those vacancies. You can help advertise the vacancies by announcing it at these meetings, working with Shannon, helping the committee to, you know, make sure they have a quorum, they know about the open meeting law. A lot of times they'll ask the select board liaison for advice on the open meeting law, so to make sure you know how the quorum works, how the open meeting law works, and the ethics laws, all of those things they will be asking you. So you can talk with Kari and get up to speed on that, so you can answer their questions. Also, they might want to know about Zoom or other staff things, how to do minutes. They ask you a lot of logistics. But one of the things that we don't do is we're not usually a voting member. We hang back and let them debate, let them decide. So like in transportation committee, I'm thinking, oh, I got an opinion about bus. No, that's not my role. So.
No, that's helpful. But while not a voting member, I would imagine there is something about helping, like, make sure that the goals are there, sort of like, hey, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Which I know sometimes it's very clear, but sometimes it isn't always, right? Or it started one way and kind of morphed into something else, or maybe just being a little bit of that sort of critical friend on, hey, what are we trying to get done here?
Right.
Let's go back to, you know, remember our charter or remember our goals.
Exactly. Yeah, bringing them back to the charge is always a good idea. And we all have our different styles. I mean, some people go and wait to be asked the question, and other people are right in there with the committee. You know, it's a style, and you get some discretion there, and you'll feel for what the board needs.
And a lot of times they do want to change the charge. So that's okay.
And sometimes they should.
Yeah.
It's okay to evolve it, or change it.
But it charges around.
I mean, you have to understand why.
That's right. So you can help them with that, and then you bring it back to the select board and you adopt it. Usually, if it's a select board committee anyway.
I assume there's also a lot of just knowledge transfer too. Like a committee doesn't, you know, they're working in a vacuum. It's like,
Right.
oh, by the way, just like the town meeting process where this committee over here is doing something, you should talk to them.
Yeah.
Right? Not doing it for them, but just suggesting, giving them context.
That's a really good point, because one of the things we want to try to do as an organization is get less siloed and working together. So you want to encourage them to go to the chair's breakfast, to listen to other people's meetings and that kind of stuff, definitely.
The liaison reports help us do some of that
Yeah.
work, as far as understanding and seeing if there's any synergies that we can bring. Now, some of the committees, everybody again has a different style, but there are different ways of participating, and one is to go to every meeting, if you want to do that. Some meetings are very important meetings, and maybe you have to. Others would be to have a relationship with the chair and just say, whenever you see something that needs help from the select board, please reach out to me. And the other could be to simply read their minutes or watch their videos so that you're keeping up. Because these can be very time intensive.
But I assume that you want to have some relationship with the chair.
Yes.
And acknowledge that you're just reading minutes and you can't have that.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, also from a staff level, this should happen automatically, but generally speaking, you should automatically be on the distribution list for whoever is posting the agenda, distributing the minutes, even in draft form, which allows us to get the jump on understanding what happened, because, and of course, it's worth it to check the pages and make sure that they're eventually getting posted, just because somebody should do that. But it's quite, for those committees that do have a staff member that's actually posting their agendas and things, so just updating those distribution lists. And a lot of that happens based on what we're about to approve, because and your staff helps us get that communication going. But if you haven't seen it in a while, then it's sometimes worth it to ask that question.
Right, so some of these committees don't have a staff person and they don't know how to post meetings. And so sometimes the meeting doesn't get posted on time, then they have to cancel the meeting. So it's really important to help them through that, remind them they get the 48 hours. They have to get it to the town clerk. They can't submit it 1 minute before the 48-hour deadline, so that make it, help them through the logistics.
Some of the admin work that we're talking about can be done with the staff here. Okay, so we're not necessarily doing the admin work for us.
Right.
But I do think that one of the most important things that we do as liaisons is to make appointments to the committee. We talked about that earlier. What's the process? But the appointments shape the work, right? And you heard all the work that Carmen went through to balance out that committee. So that's where we make a really big difference as far as the work of the committee. So that's something I would really do carefully.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we got an example of good practice there.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
hey, here's how it is.
Exactly.
So
okay, is that good? Okay. Cameron, do you have a list of the?
I do, yeah, I have the list.
Okay, so I looked at people's preferences, and some committees had, everybody wanted it. And then I would basically give it based on seniority, or I thought it was a good fit with another committee. So the ones that have been assigned to people, if you want to trade among or between members, go ahead, just let me know. And other than that, we have some orphans that we need people to agree to take on. So any questions about the ones that I have assigned?
Could you just name what they are? Because I have no idea what these positions are. Could you read?
They're right
them?
there.
Because what comes to my mind is that there's so many things going on, like the Hanscom stuff, and they just named that.
That's me.
Yeah, dangerous. What is it? An endangered place?
Yes, I was talking about that earlier.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we've picked up all the new things, and like the MCI that need a liaison.
We did.
Yeah, so
okay, so that's what I want to know what they are.
I will mention about Hanscom. There's actually 3 of them. So maybe you should just say Hanscom Area Town Selectmen / HFAC. Or, you know.
It's all of them. I assume it's all of them.
Yeah, it should be all three of them.
But aren't those, they're not select board appointees, right? Like, didn't we have Mark Giddings that one?
Mark Giddings is our representative, and he's appointed by the planning board or by the town manager, but the liaison I've been going to those meetings all year because I was the liaison.
Yeah, I'm confused because last year we didn't have that.
No, we did. We had Linda was Hats. And I was HFAC, and that's crazy. It should be the same person.
Yeah. Okay, so you're HF.
I'm both this year, I think.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
So sorry, that's Hanscom Area Town.
So what that is there's one select board from each of the 4 towns.
Yeah.
Then there's a Hanscom Field Advisory Commission, and we need a liaison to go to their meetings.
That's a mass sport hosted meeting.
Right.
Where they tend to do things like report on what they're actually doing at Hanscom.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that was the name or so I don't know if we select men, to me, should be like,
well,
can we, that's what they, okay, so like, can we go select board?
It's left over, yeah.
Okay, all right, that's why I was asking, like, it was something we could change.
It's tough to get the board counts to agree to anything.
Well, we mixed the DEIR comment letter, that's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments on the things that have been assigned? Anybody have?
So it's, well,
have a problem? Let's just talk about that with any of these.
I don't have a problem with anything I've been assigned.
Yeah.
I am particularly interested in the school committee, so I know Wendy's got it assigned. Wendy, I don't know how you feel.
I'm okay if you want to change it. It's a lot of meetings. It's every 2 weeks. And they're like,
Yeah. No, I know. So yeah, so I would take that one. That's okay.
I want Wendy to take that one.
You will take that.
I do.
I'm okay. I mean, you asked me about 4 other two. That's fine.
What's that?
I'd like that stairs one.
Okay.
Okay, so is that then? So just from a process.
Like to,
No, from a process standpoint, I just don't, is that because you're the chair, that's
yes,
the
yeah.
way to go? Okay, all right, I'm just asking how that.
I'll take comments before we vote, Mary, okay?
Yeah. Okay. On the TBDs.
Yep.
Yeah, so you know, I would be happy if there's whether there's either I'm happy to take like the retirement board or the trails committee or
great
committees.
I can do the Concord Trust only because I'm just trying to figure out the scheduling. That one would fit against all the other ones you assigned to me, so I can do that one.
Okay, so we got Hugh Cargill Trust, we have the retirement board and the trails committee. Is like one of the most fun committees. These are fun. These are fun. These are fun committees.
Yeah, the trails committee seemed like no, it just seemed like maybe a little bit less number of meetings.
Yeah, right. No controversy.
Yeah,
it's all just fun.
Yeah.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Yeah.
That I think that Hugh Cargill and the trustees of town donations should be linked.
That's true.
The
You're right.
trustees of town donations
Good
meets
idea.
quarterly, I
Yeah.
believe, so hopefully it won't conflict, but they do work together.
That's a great
Okay.
idea, because I had youth marble last year, and yeah, they need to be together.
It's the merge them with one thing.
They have different funds, but they do work together, like the trustees supports the Silent Fund campaign that the Hugh Cargill does. So they do work together, but they
Yeah.
don't meet frequently, the trustees, they're just quarterly.
Yeah, they're both white loads, really.
Great, so you'll pick those up.
I'll pick those up.
Thank
I'm
you.
done.
And Karen, you do the retirement board and trails
I'll do
committee.
retirement board and trails committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
We got ag.
I'll take the commission on the disability.
Great, okay.
Board of registrars, I didn't even know that this.
What do they do?
They certify the
They
elections.
certify.
I'm not sure we need a liaison for that.
There you go. I'll do that one.
Well, we're having a special town meeting, then you're
No.
I'm kidding.
Having a special election, so there'll
Yes.
be more.
If anybody wants to trade, I I would not mind giving up ceremonies and celebrations of the cemetery commission.
They go with the 250.
They kind of do the cemeteries and,
Ceremonies and celebrations does.
yeah, but cemetery, I'd take them if no one
That's
wants
a
them.
small one, that's.
Yeah, I've had it this year.
Yeah, there's not
Okay.
much to do there.
Okay, fine.
And then the last one we have is the ag committee.
You probably just ask Tish what's going on, so.
That's right, for the cemetery, yeah, you don't need to.
Yeah,
It's light, it's a light.
yeah.
Okay, so the only one left is the ag committee. Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
I love that group.
Oh,
I
good.
really do, they're great. I love talking to farmers. Okay, so I think we're good. Do we have a motion or do we have any comments on this before we go? Mary, go ahead. Okay, it's a comment. Come up to the table, please.
So they can hear you at home.
Mary Woolard, Hillside Avenue. It was a question of town meeting and here's a comment. I don't understand the liaison, the selectmen liaison with the school committee. I understand that the issue we were talking about earlier, that they have a charge to name school. But what does the liaison, the selectmen liaison do? Why do we have a liaison with the school committee and what does the liaison do with the school committee?
They go to the meetings, they report back to us to tell us what's going on, if it impacts something that we had jurisdiction over. So it just keeps the lines of communication open between the two committees.
But I think, actually, I was thinking along the same lines when we had the public comment, that perhaps the communication should be two ways, that our liaison, or Wendy, you just joined, should now, at the next school committee meeting, communicate what happened here. That, you know, we received many letters, we got several comments. And if there's anything else we want to communicate about it.
What would be the opportunity to do that though?
Most committees that
I don't know.
have a liaison to take a pause in their agenda, generally around new business or towards the end, and ask and solicit if they have liaison comments. We often do that with the FinCom liaison or whoever.
Right.
I don't know if that's a
public
school
comment.
committee's
I
process.
don't think they do.
Yeah.
It's not, but it doesn't mean we can't ask.
Okay.
Could ask.
Do you want
So
to?
yeah,
Thank you.
it might be nice to build a relationship.
It's a good
there,
idea.
too.
Yeah.
School committee, maybe outside.
Yeah, I don't know how it worked during public comment.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Thank you, Wendy. It's a tough
So what did
job.
you say?
We said that when, Wendy, why don't you explain it since you're gonna do it?
Well, it's just, you're just suggesting that there are some of the standard committees have an opportunity for liaison updates. And I know the school committee and I know that they have liaison responsibilities in some cases, that they introduce that concept and that might open the door for an opportunity for me to comment. I could share what's here, but we'd have to talk. It has to get on their agenda
It does.
first, so that means talking to the chairs of the
Or-
school committee.
Or during public comment.
Or during public comment.
Well, they filter public comment. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Wendy will figure it out.
We'll talk offline.
Well, we have to be honest that it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more challenging than it is with other committees who generally have a place marker for public comment. You can always slip in there, right? Even if they don't have a liaison assignment. So you've got some work to do as far as what would be the best way to be heard.
Yes.
But I think it lays good groundwork. Let's say later we're going to be talking about the capital plan or the budget or whatever. There might be things that need to be communicated back and forth about those.
Yeah, and similar to what we do here in our public comment, it's a prerogative of the chairperson to solicit comments on agenda items as they go through the meeting. So we have the public comment period specifically, so there's an opportunity to raise new issues or others that we didn't include on the agenda. That's why it's there. But that also is, and the reason it's structured that way is so that it's not just a, you know, a rehash of a debate that's an action item that's in the agenda. Because that can be disruptive to the productivity of the meeting, but it's the chair's prerogative to recognize anyone with relevant information when they're conducting a meeting.
Did that answer your question?
Well, kind of, but
Okay.
maybe in the summer or sometime, if a meeting could be explaining this more about the relationship between the selectmen and the school committee. You kind of explained it.
Yeah.
But something I couldn't say tonight, but if the school committee acts in a certain way, like this letter I had, but yet we have a selectman who's the liaison, and the school committee does something that is, I don't know what the word is. When you see the letter, you can put a word to it. Then what happens? I you know.
We understand your question.
So maybe at another time, this could be on the agenda, and then this letter from the head of chair of the MECO in Boston to the school committee can be aired, and that's what it's this, not the vote either way of what they did at town meeting and what the chair wrote them just recently.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
I have a comment from Keith Bergman online.
Yeah, I think I got it.
Keith, go ahead.
Oh, there I am. I'm on video. Keith Bergman, 56 White. I've been trying to press the button and it works. All right, great. 56 White Avenue, chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And I just wanted to put in a plug that in addition to the liaison appointments through the trust, that there actually is a seat on the trust for a select board member. And since our previous select board member is no longer on the select board, you probably want to designate your when you're making the liaison appointment, if you could include that as an appointment to the trust, then as a voting member.
We're on it. Actually, we are. And I have an email in my draft folder for Shannon to appoint me to this. And then who's the other voting member?
Well, I'm confused. Is Linda going to be a voting member and yours on the expanded membership?
Yes, but Linda's not the select board.
Right. No, we're expanding the membership. Right. So there's going to be, you'll be a voting member, and also we have now what, 6 people, I guess.
And there are a number of, Keith raises a good point. There are a number of these assignments which represent actual appointments. For example, we have Wendy on the Financial Audit Advisory Committee, and that committee, all the members, except for the at-large community members, are appointed by boards annually. So there's a light board member, there are two reps from school committee, and all of those appointments will need to be processed in the next couple of weeks.
What two on the school committee?
The Financial Audit Advisory Committee.
That committee.
Yeah, that one has.
Okay, so we'll do that.
So we've got some.
But if we think right now about what are the select board members that have to be appointed to committees,
right?
It's you on the middle school building committee.
And
no, that appointment I think was for the duration.
Yeah,
of that
great.
project,
Okay,
so
good. So it's made for the Affordable Housing Trust.
I think Commission on Disability, Mark
Is that an appointment?
I don't think that's an appointment.
I think
that's just liaison.
Well, it's been back and forth.
Town manager with select board approval.
I think we can figure this out with staff off.
We'll make sure that they're.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith.
I see another comment from Elizabeth Moore.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Elizabeth Moore, Blueberry Lane. 25 Blueberry Lane. I just have a question about role of the liaison as well. If we are watching a committee or a commission, and as a person who's just observing it, we know that there's a select board member who's there in the meeting, and we see things like, for example, they don't have it. The group doesn't have enough members to really continue on with the meeting. Or the violation of open law meeting, open meeting law, or we see that they're continuously not recording meetings, or we see that they continuously don't have minutes that are being posted for many years, or over the course of a year, many times. Is it the select board members, the liaison to the select board liaison? Is it their responsibility to go back and say to the chair, hey, can you fix this? I mean, I know what you can file a complaint, a formal complaint, but does the select board liaison have some sort of role in terms of ethic enforcement? Yes. And so that's all. That's my
well, it's in our interest. Well, it's in our interest to help that committee get their minutes posted and remind them so that we don't, get in trouble, and
but it's their responsibility.
Yeah, but we're there to remind them what the rules are, to see if they need any help, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly appropriate if a member of the public sees something that they think they have a concern, they can raise it with the select board liaison as appropriate. The authority on specific things like agenda posting and minute posting and things like that is actually the town clerk. So an inquiry to the town clerk regarding that, or if there's any question about locating approved minutes. If there's, I think the third thing you asked about was if you see a meeting proceeding without a quorum, and it is possible to conduct a meeting without a quorum, you just can't take any votes. So occasionally it does happen that members will get together and end up sharing information, but not take any actual actions as a result of that meeting. So that can occur. Obviously, it's less than ideal if it's consistently going on with some committee that's being monitored. Again, many of these committees are started and created by the select board. And I think that we as a board would need to ask ourselves if we have the right personnel. Is there a need for that board or committee if it turns out that people are really not showing up, that they're voting with their feet over the
right, like for example,
I'd like to
yeah,
this up because we're falling pretty far behind. Okay. So I'm ready for a motion.
You are. Would you like a motion to move to approve the FY 2025 select board liaison assignments as included in the select board meeting packet and as discussed during this meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, moving on to the select board goals. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. A few weeks or about a week ago, Shannon sent out 2 documents. We need to develop goals, and the documents that Shannon sent out were the goals we had for last year, and then the goals that we committed to as part of our long range plan and what progress we've made towards those. So I'd like everybody.
Okay, we didn't get that second one.
You didn't do this thing?
We got the first one
last year.
Yes.
When was that, today?
No. We had those were like
either way, they're both printed in front of you.
Thank you.
He said yeah, this
is no, this is priorities for Envision Concord.
Yep.
Yeah, that was it.
Yep.
Okay.
yes.
Yep. This is it.
Okay, that's not what. Say again what this is.
This is the priorities for Envision Concord. This is what is reviewed in 2019 as far as our progress or what the priorities were. And I think what we need to do is look at this and see where we are relative, yeah, where we are relative. So it really is just a reminder to what was listed in the Envision Concord document as far as select board responsibilities. And this was, there are a lot of documents floating around. So this is one.
Yeah.
Okay. That looked at what was the select board on the hook for some of the things in the long range plan. So this is a reminder. So I would like people to start thinking about what would you like to have the select board goals be for this year.
Yep.
Looking at, I hope these two documents are helpful, and there's more online if you want to know more about the vision. It's up to you to do the research. And again, I think the other thing that Sharon, you said in the email was to look at making the goals SMART goals, and you can look up that acronym because I can't remember what it means right now. But let's think about putting our goals together. I don't want to rush that, so I want to give it some thought. So we'll probably circle back to that sometime in June. Okay.
But yeah, we can start putting pen to paper. With
Exactly. Start thinking about what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you'd like to accomplish, and then we'll talk about them, and we'll put together consolidated. We'll vote, and it will be our goals. Great. Thank you very much.
So in looking at last year's goals, we have accomplished a number of these, so that's great.
Okay.
And then there are some, especially in like financial stability, that I think are ongoing, that I'll be recommending that we continue. Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, that's exactly what we want. Okay, correspondence policy. Two things I want to say about that. One is Sharon has developed a website, a link to a website that lists all the correspondence that we're going to publish. It's beautiful. It's up there. It's working. So all the correspondence will be ready. Which correspondence gets posted on that is something that we need to document. What are our guidelines? I propose that it would be up to the chair to determine what gets posted based upon guidelines we agree on. We've got two documents in front of us. One was the policy we used last year, which was basically the chair had sole discretion. And then the document we had the year before, which I thought did a pretty good job of outlining what do we need to see in order to post a document, and what are we not going to allow to be posted.
Right. I thought that one from October 22 was really well done, and I would keep that one.
Okay, so I will draft a correspondence policy that we will use to basically determine which letters will be posted on that website. I would like your comments after you read these. If you could get those to me by this Friday, I will incorporate those and bring a draft on Monday.
Well,
yeah, but
Comments on this one that was from October 3rd, 2022.
Whichever you want, just tell me what.
It sounded like we maybe just starting with that one and seeing if there are any edits.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's what and it says here, while many similar letters on the same topic might be received, the chair might choose a representative sample while noting the total.
Yeah.
How do people feel about that? Like, say we got 52 letters on Ellen Garrison School, and chair decided these 5 letters represent, you know, how do people feel about that? You know, that kind of thing. But sometimes we get the identical letter 52 times. In this case, I think we've gotten a lot of different letters.
It's still chair.
Right. I'm comfortable with it the way it says, but we might want to.
Let's give it some.
If just give me your comments, I will take your comments.
Yeah.
And I will draft a policy and bring it to our next meeting. Okay. Great. And thank you, Sharon. That was wonderful. That was very good that you did that. And I think I'm ready for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is that right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.